and let's get this kicked off. So Tracy and I are going to go away. I do see some new names in here though. So welcome to San Diego user group. Thanks for joining us. I know people are here from all over because everyone is so excited about this topic and just figuring out how GPT works with Salesforce and how to move forward with learning and using it. And Mark is going to give us all of the information and all the answers, I'm sure. So we'll drop off, Mark, and then you do your thing. And people just stay active in the chat. I'll monitor and help call out any questions. And cool. Go team.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, feel free, because sometimes I get a little long-winded and I just keep rolling. You can just cut me off at any point, just like, hey, Mark, we have a cool question in the audience. So do that. How long before AI goes iRobot on us? Great question to start. This we'll sort of like start out a little bit easier and then sort of edge into maybe the more fun discussions about like where this goes eventually. Let me go ahead and get my screen share set up here. I've got some stuff that I'll talk through. But as I do, or before I do at least, thanks for this group being set up. Really excited to be here to talk about GPT and the technology behind GPT and how sort of like why we're here today. Why does this even matter? I want to talk specifically to people that aren't using GPT yet, and then to those that are. And we'll just sort of, the goal here for this call is for all of us just to sort of level up a little bit together. For those of you who don't know my face or my name at this point, my name is Mark Good. I'm the founder of AI Force Training, and that is my ultimate goal with AI Force, is to empower Salesforce professionals with the technology of GPT, whether it's from an end user standpoint on using GPT like ChatGPT or AI Force GPT to get answers, get support, get assistance, get brainstorming, and all the different things that you can do with GPT for Salesforce. And then we're also starting down the path of teaching professionals how to use GPT inside the org as well. And so that's a really exciting topic, and we might get into a little bit more of that later. We've got some cool announcements coming up for that soon. So I'll try not to spoil it on this call. I just got to like bite my tongue because we're so close to rolling out some new modules. But let's get this kicked off. I'll share my screen and we'll get going. This should be fun. Window. Okay. All right. Might have to cut this out of the video if it's even possible. Screen share. Cool. Yeah, I guess I could just go for the entire screen. Just let me know if this takes.
Okay.
If you can see my two tabs side by side here.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so just to get started, so from a training standpoint, just wanted to go ahead and throw out, there's a free resource that we have at AI Force Training. It's an intro to GPT for Salesforce. I'm going to just sort of walk through that a little bit here. I recommend everyone go and just take it anyway, just to kind of get that quick introduction. But I'll be covering some of the topics on here, and we'll do some chats as well, just to show you some of the things that you can utilize GPT for today as a Salesforce professional. But I do want to, before we dive into that, is just talk about AI Day. So how many of you saw Salesforce AI Day or some of the clips that came out of it? I mean, I think that was a really big deal, what Salesforce put forward for AI Day. Especially what blew my mind was the rollout plan that they had. I knew that they were moving along with GPT implementation, but they seemed really aggressive from my standpoint of how far along they are and what they're trying to achieve in the timeline they're trying to achieve it by. So I just took a snippet of the actual rollout timeline for June and July. A lot of pilot, but also some GA, so generally available. Just different features here that they're rolling out over time. So, for everyone who thought that GPT use inside the org was like 2024, 25, further off in the distance, it's not. I mean, it's going to be here faster than you know it. And so I just think one of my big takeaways from AI Day was, as professionals, we should be prepared. Like, don't wait. Because if you wait for, let's see, was this June, July, August, and then you've got Dreamforce. So you assume at Dreamforce there's going to be more amazing announcements and feature-rich rollout. Um, the key message here is do not wait. And then Clara Shih, who is spearheading the AI team at Salesforce, she also called out Trailblazers specifically and said that Trailblazers are the key to success for GPT implementation into Salesforce. And so don't wait. That was the message. And so that's also my message to you as well. They did announce and roll out their AI trailhead. So they started rolling out some really great and what I thought was really rich content for some AI training. They went into some great stuff, including stuff that I'm going to just touch on here today with like neural nets. So if you haven't done that yet, it's available. It's on Trailhead. So go tackle that. I suppose maybe I could do a post on LinkedIn or someone could share in the comments. Yeah, comments would be a good spot. I don't have it up here, but please share that link if someone doesn't have it. And everyone should go through that. So AI Day was a big deal. We also saw the announcement of two different GPT clouds and the announcement of AI Cloud from AI Day. So these are all really big developments, and it just went to further this idea that GPT is not just um, a lot of people up to this point have been thinking of it as Einstein GPT, another feature like Einstein. And it's not. It's just so far beyond that. GPT technology is so rich that it will be infused in all the different areas of Salesforce, all the different clouds, all the different potential solutions that you might deliver to a customer or a client or an employer. And so again, just the message is this is important. Do not gloss over this. If you aren't in the AI game yet, you need to get started right away. And if you are, keep pressing forward. Don't let off the pedal. Learn as much as you can and stay on it because things will be ever changing for quite some time. So, just talking about GPT from an end user standpoint at this point and becoming an expert end user with GPT. GPT is not just for Salesforce, GPT is for your personal life as well. GPT is all about a technology that generates text, generates responses, generates answers, generates content. It generates things for you. So, um, even before I dive into the first example, I'm super excited to talk about all the things. So I'm going to bounce around a little bit, but it's like, what is GPT actually? What even is this GPT thing that's so important that Salesforce loves? And it's generative pre-trained transformers. So that's exactly what GPT stands for. GPT has been in development for quite some time. This image on the left here is actually from a paper that was published in 2016, which is sort of like the core root of the GPT type transformer that we have today that we're calling GPT. It's been iterated over time, but this one has what they called an attention mechanism, which really gave the tools ability to focus in on the keywords or the words that you put into your prompt, into your request into the tool. It really gave it its ability to really focus in on the right spots to get the right meaning to give you a more accurate response. And so that was in 2016. Nobody knew it at the time that it was such a big deal. But as it's been iterated on over time, it developed into or it ballooned into what we view today as a tool that runs or the engine that runs ChatGPT. I have a picture from Salesforce. It's the engine that runs EinsteinGPT, and it's trained on this massive data, which is scraped from public sources, public repos, the internet, just so many different places. The company that owns the transformer for ChatGPT is OpenAI. And I think this is key, or this is something that if you're really going to be a Salesforce AI professional, you're going to want to know what the different models are. We won't dive into that today, and there'll be time to learn that over time. But OpenAI is one of the owners of a large language model, and the large language model is a generative pre-trained transformer. And so these are the kinds of terms that we use to describe it. So that big data is what's really key. Um, OpenAI took that big data and for simplicity's sake, they shoved it into this neural net, which is made up of these tons and tons of hidden layers of nodes. And for simplicity's sake, again, sort of your input or your request into, say, ChatGPT, your prompt goes in one side inside this node, inside this input layer, and then it goes through this neural net. And again, for simplicity's sake, since we only have an hour here, it goes through the neural net, and the weights of the neurons determine the output or the most likely probable response that a human that was trained on all that information might give for that response. And so that's sort of like the in-depth tech behind the GPT neural net that is operating behind a chat GPT. It's really intriguing because if you boil it down, all we have here, or if we simplify, all we have here is a a chat window where you're typing your prompt, and then, that those characters go off to the GPT model, and the GPT model spits back out what it thinks is the best possible, completion or response for that message that you sent it. Okay, so I think that's fascinating. Anyway, but that's just me. That's the sort of the techie coolness behind GPT, and, I did one key there is that it's been here for a long time and it's developed for a long time, and so it didn't just pop up. It's not a fad. I think that's the point. Is a lot of people like to say it's a fad and it will be going away, and it's just not. It's not going to fail on Salesforce. Other industries are adopting it. They're not going to fail either. We're here. Um, so another thing I want to talk about from a GPT adoption standpoint is why it's so important that you adopt it today. So we were sharing a couple stories before the call got started, but in your personal life and in your work life, it's going to tackle your efficiency. Um, you won't see it right away. When you first start using GPT, there's sort of this learning curve and really understanding how the model works. And either you go through training to really get expert at it, or you really spend a lot of time, just like anything else, any other skill, you spend a lot of time learning. And eventually, once you get over that learning curve, the efficiency shows up. Upskilling becomes extremely interesting when you're using GPT tools like ChatGPT. You can upskill on any topic, anytime, and within any context. And I can't overstate enough how important that is to any Salesforce professional trying to level up on any skill. I think at the end of the day, I'll do a little forecasting here. This will ultimately change the way that Trailhead works. We won't see that soon, but it's coming. Trailhead will look absolutely totally different within the next, I'll say, 3 years. We can come back and check this video. I love making these predictions on live recordings. Um, so yeah, so Trailhead's going to look totally different. Upskilling is going to be totally shaken the way upskilling works. And let's talk about creativity. So I'm not as a creative person as others are. So using a tool like GPT helps me become so much more creative, so much faster, and uh, and that's always nice. So as a solution engine, and this is where I typically go into some examples. So right now, our solution engine has typically been like Google searches, forums, tapping our neighbor on their shoulder and asking if this like validation rule makes sense, or if I got something wrong in this code because I keep getting this error, or hitting the Salesforce um, trailhead, or pick your topic, right? But GPT is a brand new solutioning engine, and it sort of bolts in, and kind of shoves its way in and sort of takes the place of some of those other areas. Not entirely, like all those other things still apply and they have their place, but you'll slowly start to transition and find out where it makes sense to plug in GPT as you learn it. 24/7 assistant, it doesn't go to sleep. You're not waiting on someone else's response on a forum to get an answer to a question. It's 24/7. You just, if it's 3 a.m., it's 3 a.m. You just get on and do it, and that's unprecedented. And then inspiration. So, yeah, it's can be, if you view it in the right way, using a tool like ChatGPT can be, or any GPT tool can be super exciting. I was using Midjourney last night, and it's just incredible, like the inspiration you can get from an artificial intelligence. Uh, yeah, okay. So that's probably enough of that. Let's move back over into our actual training material and do a little bit of prompting. And I just want to show you some cool use cases, thinking from just a, this may be a little bit simple, too simple if you've been using ChatGPT for a while. Maybe a quick refresher, which is nice. But for those of you who haven't, just keep this in mind. There's so many use cases for GPT. I don't even pretend to try to train everybody on all the use cases. In fact, I leave off in Air Force training. What we do is we leave off and we say, like, go write down your thoughts because you're going to go out and explore. And one of the things here is just summarizing long texts. I can't tell you how many times I go to read just a really long email or really long article or something. And it's like, how nice would it be to get like 2 to 3 main key takeaways? And so here's a fun article that I copied. And so here's the long text here. And just as an example, fun example, this is an article on unveiling of Einstein GPT. Cool tool at Trailblaze. Okay. And then at the end, and then I'll tell you a little bit of prompt structure because you get me for this. In the top, this is called the context. And then down below, we have the task. So the context for the actual prompt and the task. So this is broken into two parts, this prompt. And the task is very simple. And I didn't write too much, didn't make it too big of a deal, but write a bullet point summary of the key points. And then this is an example of the AI response, but I'm going to go ahead and copy it over and just do it live for fun. So I've got ChatGPT open here. And then I won't spend too much time talking about the tool, but if you're not familiar with the tool, really get in here and play around with it. Um, but if you are familiar with it, you'll recognize what we have going on. So I just paste it. Thinking about GPT, here's a little training piece for you. The prompt that I just entered, it's like a blob, right? And so AI is responsible for sort of parsing through and identifying the commas, the periods, and it uses this tokenization method to really digest the prompt that you send it. So it can be as simple a prompt as you want, such as like, what should I eat for lunch today? Or it can be as complex a prompt as you want. And there's a limitation to your prompt window, the number of tokens that are available. And you can just think of tokens like words. It's almost like a word count, a max word count. And the reason that is because the way GPT works is the way when you go through the training process, you're defining the max character count or the max token count, and so that creates sort of like a definition of the most that a model can digest. As we go forward, the correlation or the thing that I like to relate this to, so it makes sense for everyone, is these models will improve, and part of the improvement is going to be an increase in the size of the input window. And at first, this doesn't seem like a big deal because right now I think it's something like 8,000 words. But as you'll see as we get further along in the session, we're going to start talking a little bit about sort of prompt engineering and the amount of input that you might want to put into a prompt, and why growing that window is going to be key to unlocking value for businesses, and then for us as professionals to learn how to do that and why we would utilize that. So okay, bringing it back to the example. All right, this is the article that I pasted, and then I just came to the bottom here and then write a bullet point summary of the key points. And of course, we all know what's going to happen here. I expect is that GPT, if it performs well, and it performs really well, comes back with an amazing bullet point summary of the article. And so now, as a professional, let's say I was really interested in this article, but I was going to put it on the back burner, save it to my tabs because, and then my tabs grow. Or I could just go get a quick summary, maybe some key takeaways, and maybe it's not perfect, but maybe it's enough to get me going. Maybe I didn't want to know every detail about the article. Maybe there was just some highlight that I wanted to catch if it was a big deal. And then so I can now read this quickly, and it saves me that much time. Okay. So, okay. And then just since you have me again, let's talk about modifiers. So at this point, if I got this summary from an article and I wanted to massage it a little bit more, this is one of the superpowers of GPT. There's so many paths I want to go down. I'm going to keep it succinct and say one of the superpowers of GPT is your ability to start with what seems like maybe not that big of a deal request, like the article with the request for bullet points. But from any chain of thought, which if you know, you know, from any chain of thought that you're going down, you can go down multiple paths. You go down an infinite number of paths with this information. So let's say I'm feeling creative and now I want to, like, I don't know, turn that into a LinkedIn post. So what if I said something like, now write a LinkedIn post on bullet point number, let's see, integrations of Einstein GPT. Sure. Bullet point 4. I'll say make it short. So you can add any kind of context or any kind of voice to your responses, and everything you say in your prompt absolutely matters. Um, yeah, let's hit it. Okay. So, really simple post here. Exciting news from Salesforce team. But see how we just turned a summary bullet point from the article into a potential really quick blurb for LinkedIn. What's really nice, it even throws in, right, your what do we call these? I forget. Someone jump in the chat and tell me. um, wow, my mind's going blank. Maybe I should go to bed before 3 a.m. This is great, right? And now you can go one step farther. Let's say you're, for whatever reason, you want to engage with your coworkers or your employer in some way, and you want to actually create some sort of internal memo about how this might actually apply internal to the organization. And then just think down that path. I won't continue down, but how quickly, you stumble across one important key concept, and you can quickly engage with it and turn it into other really important areas of value for yourself or your employer or your career. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Okay, so jumping back over, yeah, I'll go to the next lesson. So that was summarizing text. And earlier I mentioned this thing about leveling up, skilling up, and just general knowledge. So because GPT, because the training data included so much information um, about everything, including Salesforce. It's got information about Salesforce. In fact, it's got so much information about Salesforce. I'll take you over. I want you to see something. For anyone who hasn't seen this yet, where do I need to go for this? Did I open it? Yeah. For anyone who hasn't seen this yet, so this is a post from 5 days ago. To me, this was a monumental moment. 5 days ago, oh, I'm dating this video. Sorry about this. 5 days ago, a GPT tool powered by OpenAI's GPT, the same GPT that runs ChatGPT, actually passed a practice Salesforce admin exam, like in a big way. Do I even have the? I think this is a, yeah, it's like 78%, something like that. So we posted a video on the YouTube channel and just really did the full 30 minutes, copy and paste for every question. So nobody could doubt it. It passed the admin practice exam, and then Igor messaged me like within hours later and said like, "Hey, what you did there was really cool. I had an idea, and I took it the PD1 exam practice exam as well." And then again, also he posted uh, showing past results for the PD1 exam. And so I just want to point that out and say that if that doesn't sort of like uh, show off GPT's capabilities, now not only up to this point, now not only did we have a sort of really intelligent, but oftentimes just wrong tool called ChatGPT or whatever your GPT tool may be, that had some information on Salesforce that would help us out. Now we have what could potentially be a certified 24/7 Salesforce assistant that very quickly soon may have more certifications than us as humans. um, this is a big deal. I think this really changes the game, and I think showing that it passes the exam really changes how we think about this AI assistant. Yeah, it's an assistant. We need to keep it that way. We're the human. We're the one in charge, so we still have to structure its responses and take them and use those responses in the real world responsibly. We have to submit the information to it responsibly. We're still in the driver's seat, and we have to remember that. But very soon, it's going to cross over to the point where you'll start to wonder, who's responsible here, and the gray area will grow just a little bit. But always remember, you're in the driver's seat. You've got to drive the AI. You've got to send it the right information, get the right information, do it safely, responsibly. and then utilize that to the best of your ability for your employers and for yourselves. Let's talk about general knowledge a little bit more here. So we go into general knowledge, and I just
Hey, Mark.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, before you move on, there's a couple of questions just on this topic in the chat. So I don't want to lose them. Michelle asked if you can have ChatGPT cite its sources for you.
Yeah, yeah, you can ask and it will provide. For example, I'll just come back over here on our chain and say, cite the source of this info. And now, okay, this is a great answer from the AI model. Don't have real-time access to the current news or ability to browse the internet. So there's a lot of nuance response or information here. So I'll try to touch on a little bit of it. Uh, ChatGPT will actually cite sources for you at times, but oftentimes it will just make things up. So you have to be really cautious. You do have to read through the responses. You have to filter it through your own knowledge set and do fact checking, especially if you're making important decisions based off the information. Um, in this case, they've done a good job at telling the language model that the language model doesn't have real time access, so it's not actually sourcing real time information. So that's good in this case. I'll mention the September 2021 data training cutoff. So, like I mentioned, all that data goes into the model. It's a static point in time. If they want to roll out a GPT-5 with more recent training data, they can do that, but it will still be outdated. So they've solutioned for that with by going with GPT-4. I'm sorry, let's see, 3. Yeah, 4. They've allowed for browsing. So on Bing, which uses OpenAI's model as well, there's this option to browse. And so if you enable that, then you're getting the ability to actually reference current material. Um, so I still don't like using it to reference. Someone may be able to educate everyone in the chat. If you've used GPT to actually get good at referencing source material, please drop that in the chat. And then also DM me after because I want to talk to you. As far as my experiences so far, I don't allow it to offer up references for me in general. Although I will use it for the search function sometimes, but not often. Um, and sometimes I've used Bing for the search function as well, just to get more like relevant or recent information. There are also some other bots you can use for getting more relevant recent information. But for sourcing in general, I just advise not to use it. And even OpenAI has advised not to use ChatGPT for that. And if you do use it and you want to fact check it, or if you do use it, please do fact check it. Like, don't just take its response and post that somewhere else and say it's true information.
That's so crazy. Okay, and then one more. Bill asked when you were doing the LinkedIn post that are you concerned about losing the author's authentic voice as the narrative gets translated via AI, and like how can you accommodate for that?
Yeah, this is a really important topic in my opinion. I think, uh, unfortunately, my opinion is it's going to be inevitable that the human's voice will be diminished, I guess, or the ability to identify a human's voice will be diminished over time. I think because there's a small subset, say 1%, I would imagine, I don't know, 1% of people out of LinkedIn, maybe it's half a percent, are posting solely AI generated content. And I feel like right now we can sort of read it and maybe catch it because you sort of see words get repeated, or, it sounds a little bit inhuman when you start to read it. But then there are posts where I knew that they were actually written by a human where I also thought the same thing. And so I've started to get to the point where I don't always know when a post is human or not. And then you've got the hybrid posts, which are like, or are hybrid content, I'll say, which is maybe generated by a human, but augmented by AI. And so I think the line gets really blurry really fast. I think over time, as more people start using generative AI to help assist them in their what they do, emails and posts and just content creation just naturally becomes more artificial. So I think right now, thankfully, we all can still sort of just trust for the most part what we consume, from a meaning that whether or not it's human generated or AI generated. But over time, that's going to shift, and I don't know how all that plays out. It does concern me though. Yeah. Any follow-ups to that before we move on?
Not right now. I have a question about
Yeah.
the September 2021 thing, but we can leave that for the end. I'll let you get through this.
No, no. Well, we don't have much time, so you might wanna squeeze it in.
I was just thinking, like, with that example I used at the beginning of this, where these brand new admins were asking how to implement something. But if this model is only using data as of September 2021, that means it's never going to recommend to them to use like the latest flow feature, right? And so it would always be missing something.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the big challenges of trying to use GPT today. If you're learning, especially because you don't have all the current knowledge and you're trying to learn the current knowledge, you can't get that out of the standard 3.5 model Chat GPT. Now, if you roll over to GPT-4, you're going to get a little bit better. If you turn on browsing to get information, you kind of have to send it to the internet, like, hey, you're going to go to the internet. And I don't have a good example set up for this, but it's just not as effective as, like, you can go over to Bing right now and do a regular a Bing chat, and that's over with Microsoft, and it's going to do a better job. So you could ask about flows, Salesforce flows, and it's less likely to point you to a process builder, which is really nice. But in general, the way ChatGPT is right now, the data cutoff is still a real challenge. Now there are other tools, like the one that passed the Salesforce admin exam was Sidekick, and that one it does a great job at citing sources, and it's got more relevant recent information. Also working with someone who is developing sort of another bot that's sort of trained on very specific niche data for Salesforce, and that will actually answer all Salesforce related relevant information. So that's really intriguing. So there's a lot boiling, a lot coming up. But just know for now with ChatGPT, you have the training data cutoff. It is going to be sort of a nuisance. And if you're learning Salesforce because of that, it's sort of a GPT is sort of a learning augmenter, and you can't just go to it and get the absolute correct, right, most recent information.
Very cool. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Some really cool use cases. Oh, I still didn't even make it to the actual request. Okay. In Salesforce, what object setup do you use for many to many relationships? And so it's sort of this is sort of along the same lines. And I'll just ask it many to many. So many to many relationships between two objects can be created using a junction object, which is great. So say maybe you knew that already, but it's just been a while since you set it up. And so just getting that on the screen really quickly without having to go to um, even just going to type in Google. I mean, if you're here already and you've got it up, you could just in your workflow, just click into it and get what you need. It's really nice. And then what's really great too is you can, if you got a response and you're like, I have no clue what a junction object is, you can start down the learning process without having to leave. So it's sort of an in context learning, and of course you would want to leave this, right, to do some double checking, unless the implication of you going through this process and trying this out, the failure is not that high of a risk. So if you were to go to your org right now and try to set up a junction object and you had no clue what it was, you might be all right, because this create a new custom object, two master detail fields. That all looks good. Configure any additional fields or settings. Okay, as needed. Use a junction object to associate records to original objects. All right, so you might be able to suffer your way through that and get to resolution. And the thing is, where it may have taken you, uh, I don't know, to an hour to go through and like do your research, hit the right trailhead, go to the right forum, hit the right link. Here you can just quickly iterate over and ask follow-up questions and ask for more details. And oh, here's another cool. Okay, since you have me, check this out. Uh, think about this when you're chatting with Chat GPT or any other chat like GPT tool. Your prompt is one big blob, and so all of this that you see on the screen is one big piece of information that's going back into the GPT tool. The GPT tool has zero memory. everything you see on the screen is what's going to go into the GPT tool next. So it's going to include this text, it's going to include all of this text. And so what happens is as you're going through this conversation, um, it's getting the tool is getting more and more context for every prompt if you keep going down and sending messages back and forth, like tried that, didn't work. The tool is getting even more context with each additional iterative request and response. And so now that we have that, all of this blurb for our next request that goes out, all of this information will be included in the actual request to the GPT model or to the neural net. And so what happens here is, and this is totally different from Googling or searching. And this is why GPT is so important as a technology, like a fundamental paradigm shift in technology of what we have. All of that information is going to go back. All this becomes the new context. Whereas in Google, if you clicked on a link and went to a page and started reading, and then you said, that's not quite right, and you closed the tab and you went back to your Google search and you went to the next link, Google fundamentally didn't present you any new information based on you coming back from that link and saying, that's not it. You still have the fundamental same list of links to go through. Here, if I say that didn't work and I add another blurb and now it's asking questions, so I can respond to a question and get more information. All of that new sort of text goes into the next block that's submitted to GPT, and GPT digests all of this like long string of context and says like, based on all of this, even the newest stuff, even the oldest stuff, what's the most likely the correct answer or the right information to generate that sounds like a human here, and then it gives us a response that sounds even better. So why is that so important? It's so important because that's just the fundamental nature of GPT technology and how a chatbot interface connects us to it, and why this is such a game changer. Again, I hope I've convinced everyone that this is a game changer and not just a fad. Okay.
I think so.
Let's jump into like validation rules. What a great use case. Whenever we click over into some more like technical type things like validation rules and formula fields and triggers and Apex code and test classes, I just really like GPT for this kind of stuff because this is the kind of stuff that you uh, maybe as an admin and a non-developer might just totally shy away from. Like, okay, this is too far. I'm not a techie, or I'm not a, like I'm not a developer here. Okay, what are we doing? I'm not a developer here. But with tools like GPT, with tools like ChatGPT and GPT style tools, the thing is that it really lowers the bar to what you can achieve based on your current knowledge set. And I've been having a lot of really great conversations with GPT trailblazers recently, about this concept of sort of this shakeup that's happening. I'm talking with some professionals that are brand new to the ecosystem, and they're still working on either the associate or the admin cert just to get started and get off the ground, and even look for that first Salesforce position. And the conversations and the level of depth of information that we're discussing as we talk about how they're using GPT for their career, for their growth, it far exceeds what a typical conversation would be between someone like me and someone who's just starting in the Salesforce ecosystem. Far superior to what it would be before. There really is um, a reset happening about the amount of knowledge you need, the type of knowledge you need, and how to utilize your knowledge with GPT by your side versus without GPT by your side. And I think that's going to shake out over the next couple of years. I think some shifts are going to occur. For now, stay the course. Like, go continue working on leveling up, skilling up. Go get your certifications to show off your skills, your abilities. Go do the projects to really drive home that muscle memory on how to do things. Like, knowledge will always be, at the end of the day, the most valuable thing you can acquire. However, at the same time, utilize GPT. Make sure you're using it to the best of your ability, and it's going to augment your ability to do all of those things that I just mentioned. And go talk to someone who's brand new to the ecosystem, who's using GPT. Ask them what they're doing with it, and you're going to find out really quickly um, why they're going to level up really fast, in my opinion. Okay, so write a Salesforce validation rule for close loss reason is required if stage name is set to close loss. So really simple prompt here. I'm writing a validation rule, and maybe I don't know how to write. Maybe it's the first time I've written a validation rule, or maybe I've written them but I don't like writing them, or maybe I'm really good at them but I've got something else to do and I'm working on two screens, and I just wanted to pump out something that I can try to just copy and paste and drop into the to Salesforce org to test it out and see if it works. So I'm going to do a new chat here. So the request here is to write a Salesforce validation rule. Well, I know GPT is trained on data that includes context around validation rules. 4, and then I use the actual API name. There's some controversy around this right now, so maybe talk with your employer if you plan on using API names inside your ChatGPT window. And then this is a great pause to have and say that everything that you put in this window will be used to train the next iteration of GPT. So you will not want to include any sensitive, personally identifiable information, any protected information, any intellectual property from your companies or your personal life, whatever. And you want to keep that out of the typical chat GPT. I think I want to say I saw the other day a way to opt out of that. So if you see an opt out, select that and you can have a little bit more comfort when you're utilizing the tool there. Um, Otherwise, keep it out of the chat window. And one cool thing you can do is if you got a name like Mark Good, instead of saying Mark Good, just say Mark, or make up a first name, whatever you like to do. In this case, I'm okay. I was working in a dev org, so I can use the API name. So not concerned about it. So write a validation rule. So we want to require this field if the stage name, which is a standard API name inside of Salesforce, the stage is set to close loss. That's also the standard pick list value. So let's shoot that off. And just think about a couple things here. First of all, how quickly that response came back. Second of all, and is blank is pick val. Second of all, it looks right. Someone audit that and let us know in the comments if that's right. I'll look at it. Here's a correct answer on the left. It looks close, if not exact. Couple key takeaways. You're going to get wrong answers. That's okay. Think of any wrong response you get just as a self reflection that you could be doing something to improve your prompt to make your prompt get you closer to the right answer. We talk about getting 80%, getting 80% of the way and then running with it. So if you do get a wrong response, you could spend 15 minutes going back and forth trying to get 100% right, but just go ahead and grab when you get 80% and just massage it the rest of the way so that you can move on with your life. But do clock that you didn't get a great response or 100% response with your prompt. You might want to adjust your prompting style a little bit more next time. You'll have to play around with your prompts or come get some training to learn how to do prompting to get the best possible response that you possibly can out of GPT. And a couple more takeaways here. Like imagine if I'm writing this out by hand and I've got to write and in my open parentheses and I miss the comma, say, which happens, or I forget to do an underscore, which that doesn't typically happen. What else? What else typically happens? Yeah, not too much can go wrong with this one. You got two functions, and if you're following the prompts inside of Salesforce, you can get pretty close to this. So you might save a little bit of time, but this is a really simple validation rule. What if you've got a really complex validation rule? And the time savings as you work it over and over again, you're going to get much more proficient at using it. And that's where you want to be. You want to be, to start with on your journey, you want to be the most proficient GPT end user, tool user, someone who knows when you have a problem to solve, knows when to go out to GPT for it versus the other tools, the other standard tools that we have today. Okay, so that was validation rules. Jumping down into formula fields. Yeah, and go through this training if you want to get a little bit more detail. There's some videos in here that take you a little bit, maybe not further, but just different directions. So you can get more information if you do that. Here's the write a Salesforce formula for 10%. of amount, meaning the amount field. Just trying to think of something extra I can share for you in case someone has gone through this already here. I'll just go ahead and do the request. So we'll do it with here's a good thing. We'll talk about GPT 3.5 versus 4. And what does this even mean? Why are there even different variations of this? Every language model owner is going to have sort of different iterations to their tool, to their neural net language model. And in the case of OpenAI, they've chosen GPT, they call it 3.5, and then GPT-4. So GPT-4 is trained on the same data as 3.5, but they've gone through a different style of training such that GPT-4 is really geared towards the question and answer style of engagement. So 3.5 was not, 4 is, but 4 also came. What they did is they also trained with a much larger context window for your prompting. So I think this is up to like 24,000. Someone correct me in the chat, something like that. 24,000 tokens. So kind of like words, but not really. It's going to be less words. So you get a much larger context window. So it's actually slower to generate. And they also limit it right now to a certain amount of messages, 25 for every 3 hours. Uh, I also want to say maybe that's just a plus. So you might get to ChatGPT if you're on the free version. You may not get that. You may just have 3.5, and so you'll just be using that. But if you have plus and you opt for that, then you'll have 4, and then you can utilize that as well. 4 is a big deal. Four is actually the one that passed the PD1 cert practice exam. It also passed the bar and so many other great tests that sort of give it the credibility that it has from a question and answer standpoint, which is how a lot of people tend to use GPT. But there's just so many different use cases for it that you don't have to use it that way. Well, yeah. Well, let's use 4 for this one. So write a Salesforce formula for 10% of amount up to 100K and an additional 5% for any amount above. And then I'm just going to try to wind down a little bit after this and leave some space for some conversation before we get too close to wrap time. But check this out. So again, this is more of a simple formula, but also when you approach a new formula for a new solution that you haven't worked before, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it takes some bandwidth to like really think through what fields you need to use, what the conditions are, what the functions are you need to include, how the structure needs to be. So just to be able to brainstorm even with GPT and say, hey, I'm going to be writing a formula, and here's some of the context. What do you think? And then getting a response is great. But in this case, I'm able to provide a prompt that gets this one's structured a little bit different than what I'm used to. So I'm not sure. Again, someone can audit that and tell me if you do get a wrong response, you add your modifiers and you request more information and you add it. You tell it where it's wrong, and then it will go through and make changes to try to get the right answer for you. And you can evaluate that. You can even copy that right into your Salesforce org and then test it if you don't even want to read through it. See what the results look like, right? So, but we're responsible for the results of this at the end of the day. Humans are. You don't get to go to your boss and say, or someone that's employing you and say that ChatGPT messed it up. So, oh well, no, you're responsible. So you have to do the legwork behind that. Let me just give a final statement here from a wrap up standpoint, which is see if I covered all the things that I cared most about here. Yeah, this is. Oh yeah, this is a great one to wrap up on. This is the smallest slide you'll never be able to see. This is everything that we've covered today is sort of like, okay, well, how do you engage? How do you get engaged with GPT? What are you using it for? Like, how should we frame it? What are some of the missteps that we're going to have while using it? What are the challenges? Some of the challenges, at least. Just trying to touch on the importance. Like, this is game changing technology that's here to stay. It's not going away. You need to get engaged with it. But let's talk about the future for a second. Everything we've discussed is becoming educated on being a good end user or an expert end user of a GPT tool. We're about to transition into an incredible world where GPT is infused into the Salesforce org. And then we will be the professionals that are responsible for deploying that, managing it, understanding the risks, understanding how to utilize the technology the right way for the right business cases and use the right models for them. There's so much to unpack there. There's no way we can do it. But just know this is the takeaway for this call. I think maybe at the end of it all, just know that ChatGPT is the very baby, tiny initial step beginning. Get there, get that done, and get ready to move along because the wave is rolling in fast and it's going to include a ton of amazing capability that you're going to want to be a part of for deploying for your organization. And yeah, and stick around. So follow me on LinkedIn if you're not already, because I'll be posting all about this for months and months and months to come. And then AI Force Training is developing the next steps for our training material to go next steps with Salesforce, with GPT, with everything that needs to happen. And I'll try to just leave it there. And let's hop into some more questions to tackle some more things.
The chat is having a debate about robot overlords, thanks to you, Tracy.
It's a, you know, it's a joke. It's kind of like a joke, fun fantasy now, but there will be a great conversation to be had about that soon, maybe within the next 6 months, and I'd be happy to host that as well.
Yes, I will pencil you in. Mark, this was great. Thank you. There's been a lot of good chat going on. Mark and Michelle are just like going back and forth answering all the questions.
Thank you
There,
so much.
there was an interesting question a while ago um, about like visuals. Like, will Chat GPT ever provide a screenshot of what it's telling you to do? Something like that. What do you see happening around there in the future?
Will ChatGPT ever provide a screenshot? Oh,
Yeah, like
meaning
could it
providing
generate a
directions?
screenshot of the solution or something that it just
Oh,
told you should go do?
yes, absolutely, that will be a thing. It's not immediate, that's not right around the corner, but we already have image generation from OpenAI, which is DALL-E 2. That's infused into Bing already, so you can go to Bing and generate an image using DALL-E 2. So you can provide instructions on what to generate. That image generation is not as good as other tools like Midjourney right now, but the step between ChatGPT giving a response as a text version versus an image version, that's not a far leap. And actually, GPT technology, what it's really good at is translating. And I don't mean from language to language, although it's good at that as well, but from sort of one language to another. So a text language response to an image language response, that's a that's not a leap. That capability already exists today. It's just not a function that OpenAI has put into ChatGPT and developed as a tool for end users yet.
Gotcha.
There could be a plugin for that. So if somebody knows about a plugin, drop that in the comments.
That'll be the new thing. Instead of there's an app for that, there's a plugin for that. I know we're at time. We could probably talk about this for days. Um, I have to go to another meeting, but maybe Tracy can
I have a
stay
hard
on and take
stop
any other.
too. I'm at a
All
meeting.
right, we're all leaving then. But Mark, thank you so much. This is great. I did put the link to your LinkedIn in the chat so everybody can follow you and bug you in chat there. And yeah, thank you so much. This was
This is
awesome.
fantastic.
Yeah, awesome, great. Yeah, we should all sync back up in a couple months to see what all has changed since we last talked.
Yes, for
That's
sure.
right. And I wrote down your trailhead forecast, so I'm going to see if you're right eventually.
I'll tell you, AI is going to change AI Force's training program on how we train. So I expect Salesforce will either follow or lead the way.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, especially you, Mark. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks.
Nice.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.